Okay, now for the third plant rendering video, I chose something rough, a hickory tree, and I'm going to show you one possible way to start this. So you can see my picture there. I'll bring that more into view, and you can see that I've actually matched up in a general way, sketched out the vertical arching strokes of the plates that peel off. So here I go. I'm actually using a 50 here, mid-tone, and I'm just going to get these dark shadow crevices started. Slight outlining on the edge. The branch in the background basically can become that 50% gray. You can see I used a very sketchy, loose quick style to simulate the general texture of the bark. The detailing is where it's going to happen in the marker stage. So here I am slowing it down and actually enhancing and broadening the shadow out to show a little bit more space, like that. Now these plates can be up to 2.5 feet long. Some of them, when they peel down on a big tree, they just slowly bow outward, and eventually they just fall right off the tree. Here we got a big shadow. By the way, there is a core shadow. It's actually down through this area. I'm going to sort of ignore that and just stick with the shadow textures of the crevices. You might say that if I was just doing a quick study, this is what I would be doing very fast, not really slowing down much at all. Just want to get the subject blocked in quickly. But, if you learn to work like this, you can actually go from fast and loose to tight in a very realistic looking render as you go. And you can see I finished this whole area and put a shadow side on that branch, and that's phase one. Now for the light tone, let's see, what do I want to use? I have a 20, and by the way, I am using warm grays. I've switched. These are my basic tones, 50 and 20. So now if you watch, I can just lay this 20, right over everything. This is the base tone of the tree. And what I've done here is I've actually replaced that pencil drawing with the 50% gray marker, and that becomes my new pencil, which guides me to the location of where all the grooves and plates are. It's a trick I've used a lot in the past when I don't want to lose the structure. So, step number 3. I'm actually going to, find a darker tone, probably something in the range of a 70. That looks good. Now, this is, like I said, the core shadow is right in this area, but I'm still not actually doing the core shadow. I'm still in drawing mode, so I'm doing the texture. I'm going to lengthen some of these shapes out to match my reference a little bit more. And you notice what I'm doing here, I'm actually peeling some of these away. A little bit of a gestural quality here. You can do that. If you get comfortable, you can actually start enhancing your rendering by adding a touch like that. There's a shadow of one of these plates that just goes across like that, which is very cool. Another one comes out like this. And you notice I have lighter areas, and then I have darker threads of shadows, grooves happening. So I'm starting to sort out the plates a little bit better. And I'm doing it rather in sketch fashion, which simply means my render is not designed to be a perfect replica of the photo. It's designed to be a good recreation of what I'm seeing in the photo in terms of effect. What does this bark look like? What is the base tone of the tree? What is the shadow tone? This whole branch I just noticed is in shadow. In fact, let's go ahead. I'm starting to switch to tone if I could only talk, and just lock in that backside of the tree. I'm actually going to go for it here. Now that I've got some of that texture and I'm going to take the 70 and just actually start that core shadow like that. And it worked. I can still see texture underneath the 70. That's a trick, you know, it's a little risky because it might have gone too dark, but it didn't. If it did, I'd just come back in with white pencil, right? Now, the middle transitional tone, this is getting that roundness. This is a cylinder, remember? And now I'm actually going to add this in sporadically through to show the color changes on the bark. At that point, I'm actually ready to start going into this with a little bit of pencil, which I will now do. So I'm going to say white and black again. And let's actually bring some of the white up in the shadow area. So this is a piece peeling away from the tree. It catches the light. Again, a little flick of light here and there. You know, this is the transition between core shadow to midtones and then into the highlight area. It's right about here, about 1/3 across the tree. If I push harder in these midtone areas, I can get the white of the pencil to show. But again, the risk always is that it'll start to get soft looking. That can be remedied though. So I'm sharpening again because that's necessary when we get into these more intense textures. You're going to be doing a lot more sharpening of your pencils. You may have to go out and buy another white and another black, probably a white. I won't completely finish this render because that would probably take longer than I want this video to last. So I'll just kind of fast forward to the main event, which is getting some of this to come into focus. So here I am with the black pencil. Now I'm bringing up some of those really strong edges. This is what I mean. I call it that 90% rule. When the illustration is 90% done, but not 100, it looks a little bit soft, blurry, not in focus. It's sharp details, fully established tones, good contrast that solve that problem. If you have a very low texture subject, you've got to put some sharpness in it somehow. If you can't increase contrast, then you've got to define some edges somewhere. So imagine you're rendering a piece of gauze. You've got to make it look like it's in focus. Well, you're going to show some of that thread in the weave of the gauze to bring it into focus. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm literally just picking out the deepest shadow details and grooves. This bark goes right past the branch. The branch actually emerges from behind the tree, so I can go right through like that. And you notice I've kind of maintained some looseness. I like to do that. It's really, I recommend you do quick studies, like give yourself 10 minutes to render out a subject and just see how far you get. And don't worry about being a bit loose. Doing 10 studies loosely like that will teach you more about rendering than doing one study in the same amount of time and laboring it over and over. because, and actually switching from subject to subject too. Speed gets you through subjects more rapidly. You learn more, you make more mistakes, but you also have more successes. You discover more. So you can see, actually, I'm pretty happy with that. It's coming up rather nicely. Now I'm going to start bringing, I switched to white pencil, I can start bringing up the brighter highlights. I want that kind of shredded look to come forward on the bark. So a dark shape never just stays a dark shape. I put an edge on it somewhere like I'm doing with these. If there's a shadow cast, then there must be a hard edge, right? So where is the hard edge here? Well, it's actually going way down here. So I'm actually going to do a little change there and put an edge on this pencil that I put across the white pencil. Put a little edge on it and a little, to give it volume, to give it shape so it looks dimensional like a physical thing. So on some of your renders, I noticed you were real close. You were at that 90 percentile point where your renders, you had all your tones, you had your details were coming into focus, but they weren't all the way there. This is where what you do and how you get to that last 10 and 5% is you're really going in and fine-tuning, you're sharpening. Remember, with pencil like this, I could go into this and lift this all out with a plastic eraser. And I will go through, I'm just going to go through a little longer, like that. Now, watch what happens when I take a light tone and just lightly blend over some of that. It will tend to soften a bit, so I'm just using a very light touch. But what I would really like to do is to get that core shadow to come forward a bit more. And I think 70 is too strong, so let's back that off and let's say, what do I have here? No, let's go 60. Not a big difference, but let's try it. And right there is where I said the core shadow is, so I'm actually going to put a glaze over the top. These markers are transparent, they're lacquer based, and so you can do a glaze very similar to what you see in oil paint. And there you go. I actually have simulated, it's not perfect, but I've simulated a shagbark hickory.